What's up, my family? Listen, first-time listener, or you've been here the whole damn time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, giddy up, let's go, no notes.
That's my baby.
I'm dying.
That's my baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they scored. They did it.
Slap.
What the hell was that? Oh, yeah.
What the f*** are you talking about?
All right, everybody, welcome in. This is Real Talk Fantasy, exclusively on A2D Radio. Mike Everly, Jesse King, I'm Rob Brinkman. We are broadcasting from the Real Talk Studios. Each and every week, we are brought to you by Baggio's Breads, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, home of the best stuffed breads, tomato pies, sandwiches, cutlets, and meatballs. Mention A2D Radio for 10% off your in-store purchase. Now open 9 to 3 every Sunday to better service your football, Eagles, NFL needs. We're live. We are broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Download us wherever you get your podcast, Spreaker, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and iTunes. Got a big show, kind of like the midway point for fantasy football regular season, so I thought it'd be fun. We do our fantasy football midseason awards. We'll have our standouts. We'll have our disappointments. We'll have our breakouts for the second half. We'll have potential league winners. Later on the show, we'll cover the bye weeks, waiver wires, fill-ins for those bye week guys, and then we are still alive in our survivor pool on DraftKings. It's going to be a tough week for that, I can tell you right now. Kind of getting into all the teams that I like this week that I think are locks to win. We've already used them. This is what makes the survivor pool tough. Survivor pool's tough. We got you covered. Like I said, let's start with our midterm fantasy awards. We'll start at the very top of the player pool. This is a pretty easy one, at least in my. Christian McCaffrey has been the MVP for fantasy football so far this season. It's got to be. I mean, I'm scrambling for backs. I just made a trade that we'll talk about down the line today with a guy. I think I got the better of him because he needed running backs. But running back has been tough this year. Eckler and Barkley are out. Christian McCaffrey scores a touchdown every week. He's at or near the top in rushing leaders. He's a great PPR option if you're in a PPR format. He's good for all formats. Touchdown only, standard, PPR, half PPR. It doesn't matter. He scored a touchdown in, I think, 15 straight games? 14 straight games. The guy's a machine. And with all due respect to some of the other guys we can name, Tyreek Hill comes to mind as well. I mean, it's got to be Christian McCaffrey. It's got to be that running back that people maybe took a risk on at the top of their draft, even though we told you to draft receivers. It's paying off big drafting that running back. He got traded to San Francisco about this time last year. Did some things for the Niners down the stretch. And now with that full offseason and that zone running scheme with Kyle Shanahan, he's been off to the races this year. He's my MVP for fantasy so far. Jesse, what about you?
I mean, look, you can't say a bad thing about McCaffrey. The best running back in the league goes to the best rushing offense in the league. It's a match made in heaven. Everyone, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that if McCaffrey is going to stay healthy all season, he's going to be the number one running back. It's pretty obvious. If you continue to think on more about fantasy MVPs, one big thing that I tried to think, or that came up in my mind, should I say, is, okay, McCaffrey's the best player in fantasy, right? He was, the one, Justin Jefferson was the 101. But if you wanted a running back, there was no one that was even coming close to McCaffrey. But you didn't really have a chance to get him unless you had a top, 3 pick, maybe top 4 pick in your fantasy draft. So it's tough to really just give him the MVP because a lot of people didn't have a chance to get him, right? So when I was thinking deeper about, who would my fantasy MVP be, who are the guys that have really, really been winning you leagues that you had a chance to get, everyone in your league had a chance to get, and they're actually winning you games. And a guy that popped up to the top of my mind, Raheem Mostert. He was going virtually undrafted in most fantasy drafts. And the man has been, maybe the number 4 fantasy running back this season so far. He's got 2 games of over 100 yards rushing already. At least one game. I think the second one was around 80 maybe. He's got all the receiving yards to boot. He already has maybe seven touchdowns.
Maybe seven.
4 in one game.
8 touchdowns. The man has been electric. So, he was a big hit of mine. We openly tell you whenever we have fantasy misses. So, there's no problem with us saying, we got a fantasy hit here. Raheem Mostert was a hit, similar to the 49ers run offense, right? We said it's the best in the league. McCaffrey went to the best run offense in the league. Well, they're running basically the same exact run offense. Obviously, the passing game is completely, it's pretty different, right? With Tyreek Hill putting up monster crazy numbers. But Raheem Mostert, you might as well just take the whole backfield. Devon Achane, he's the only one. Achane, even though he's out now for 4 weeks on the IR, he's the only one in fantasy, only running back in fantasy that I think has exactly the same, if not just a fraction fewer fantasy points per game, right? Average per game than McCaffrey. So, and with Jeff Wilson, coming back off the IR and now starting to practice, he could be another one to throw in there. So, give me the whole Miami backfield as fantasy MVPs. He could have gotten them at any time in the draft. They were going undrafted in a lot of drafts, and they're winning leagues.
Interesting perspective from Jesse, going with someone that everybody could have got, literally everybody could have got, as opposed to me, who's going at the top of the draft, the best player. Jesse may be looking at it, maybe most valuable, which, Mike, where do you stand?
So, I'm going to go with the guy that you guys both mentioned, Tyreek Hill. He's on an absolute tear. The only down game that I remember him having is the Patriots, and even that wasn't a down game. I mean, he still put up points, but, he is on an absolute tear when it comes to yards. He's probably going to get over 2,000 yards receiving this year. He's putting up touchdowns. He's going for 40, 50, 60-yard touchdowns week in and week out. For me, I have multiple shares of Tyreek Hill, and he is definitely keeping me in almost every single week. It's interesting because they usually play in the afternoon, or they've been playing in the afternoon, and I'll be down 30, 40 points, and I'm like, well, I got Tyreek Hill, I'm good. He'll come back. So for me, my MVP's got to be Tyreek Hill. He's been on a tear. Tua finds him no matter what. He's going to go for 100 yards every week, probably a touchdown, get 6-7 catches. He's my MVP of the week and right now, he's, I think, the favorite to win the Offensive Player of the Year. I put some money on him at the beginning of the year, and I think I put $5 to win 95, and now they're offering me 40 for cash out because of how well Tyreek Hill has been doing. So for me, my MVP's got to be Tyreek Hill.
Interesting. All right, so kind of in different camps, different styles of thinking on the MVP. Let's go with biggest surprise. Biggest surprise. Mike, why don't you lead us off here?
Biggest surprise is not a big surprise to me, but Devon Achane. He came into a backfield behind Mostert, Jeff Wilson, and has exploded onto the scene. One of the things about him coming out of the draft, he was arguably the fastest player at the draft. He was burning up records at Texas A&M. And to see him go in the 7th, 8th round in a lot of drafts, he was getting drafted ahead of Mostert. But people weren't expecting what they've seen from him now. He will be out for a couple weeks. But the tear that he went on is unreal. And I think you're looking at a guy, if you have a keeper league, you're looking at a guy that's probably going to be a first-round pick next year. Maybe second round, but he's definitely going to be at the top of the draft boards because Achane is just lighting the NFL on fire. And that entire offense it's a track meet every week. Waddle, Hill, Achane, Mostert. They are just lighting things up. Mike McDaniels knows exactly what he's got in Achane, and he's deploying him perfectly.
I expect it all to keep rolling down there in Miami as long as Tua can stay on the football field.
Yep.
Breakout guy, Jesse?
Yeah, there's so many, that you could really point to. You said most surprising, right? So there's a lot of
surprising.
Running backs. Yeah.
Surprising, breakout, however you want to.
That's fine. Yeah, right. There's a lot of running backs that, we would not have pegged, to get full workloads or to put up, some of these monster games that they put up recently. a guy like Zach Moss, coming over late to the Colts. You would not have expected him. No one was drafting him in draft season. You weren't expecting him, to be, getting 30 touches a game and running for almost 150 yards. But when you think deeper about that, right, there is a running back that pops, or a few running backs that pop every season, right? And a lot of them can be league winners. And it's really because the running back position comes down to, to two things, right? Health and carries. Of course you can get some targets and all that stuff, but it's really the health, being healthy, being out there on the field, or on the other side of that, if you're the number two, you're number one, not being healthy and giving you the opportunity, to get all the carries and touches and blow up. So it doesn't really surprise me, when I think about it like that there's a lot of running backs that have been great this year. But one thing that's always hard to find off of waivers is a true alpha number one caliber wide receiver for fantasy football. And you have to look no further than 5th round draft selection, out of Brigham Young University, Puka Nacua. Some people still probably don't know this man's name, but he came into the league and has torn it up, right? The only thing he hasn't done is put up a lot of touchdowns, but it's week 5. We're through week 5. We're going into week 6. He's got 300-yard plus games already, and the other 2 games, only 70 yards each, right? So Puka Nacua is the most surprising. I didn't believe any of the hype in the offseason, and judging by what he's actually done, right? Was there even really that much hype? Of course his name was mentioned, but no one was really beating the drum and saying, you got to get this guy. I'm going to die on the hill with him, right? Puka Nacua has been the most surprising player for me this season.
Yeah, and he got his opportunity. Cooper Kupp missed the first 4 weeks of the season, and that's a really good one, Puka Nacua.
Yeah, and if you go back and you look at fantasy seasons past, find a wide receiver that came out of nowhere.
And I just want to touch on that real quick. He basically made Van Jefferson expendable. Van Jefferson just got traded this week because Puka showed up and took his job. I mean, he Wally pipped him.
Yeah, I mean, Van Jefferson's trash, right?
I don't disagree, but they were expecting big things after that Super Bowl to Van Jefferson to step up in Cooper Kupp's absence. And you know what? Puka was like, yeah, that's my job. Yeah,
no, you're right. And since we're talking about it, it's definitely a tip of the hat to the health of Cooper Kupp. He came back. We saw what he did to the Eagles week 1. But they would not have cut Van Jefferson if they had any real concerns and question marks about Cooper Kupp's hamstring. How can you cut a wide receiver if you're not sure that that Cooper's going to stay out there on the field? But I don't want to digress. We can keep on going with the awards.
Yeah. Surprise, breakout, however you want to classify it. It's for me. I mean, I was big on Jahmyr Gibbs. A couple of us on the panel were high on Jahmyr Gibbs. It ain't the Jahmyr Gibbs show in Detroit. It's the David Montgomery show.
Sure.
I watched this guy play in college at Iowa State. Didn't think much of him. Saw him in the Bears. Not really do much with his opportunity. He gets the big-ish contract from Detroit, and he's taken over that backfield to the point where it's hard for Dan Campbell and that Lions coaching staff to justify playing Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery's running so good between the tackles, outside. He gets all the goal line work. I mean, we're Philadelphia fans, except Mike. He's a Dallas fan. We're switching over.
I'm rooting for the Phils today.
Hey, that we'll take it. We'll take anything we get with the Phils. But I mean, this guy he's been awesome. I didn't see it coming at all. He was a straight fade in draft season for me. I thought the Lions were going to shift towards that, more explosive back like Alvin Kamara, which Dan Campbell was very close to at his time in New Orleans. But I mean, we have the Philly shove here, brotherly shove, whatever they're calling it these days in Philadelphia, where Jalen Hurts just sneaks it in and gets it every time. I mean, Detroit has the Montgomery push. This guy is getting in the end zone. He's getting his yards. He's getting pretty much all the opportunity. David Montgomery, he surprised me. It just proves to me that the Bears just don't know how to develop talent on offense at all. because, and I know they're looking better, but I mean, these teams. I mean, I think Chase Claypool, he's got traded again. The Bears couldn't figure out with him. I mean, there's just countless guys that go to the Bears and just can't figure it out. So, I mean, that was clearly a Bears coaching staff problem with David Montgomery and not a David Montgomery problem. He's absolutely killing it in Detroit. Moving through these awards here, disappointments. I struggled with this one because I looked at the top of the draft. First off, I want to discount. Now, you guys can do what you want with your selections, but I'm trying to discount injuries as disappointments. That's not the player's fault for the most part. You know, Saquon, Eckler, Justin Jefferson's now on IR. We'll talk about that with the waivers and the fill-in guys. I mean, Aaron Jones has been banged up. I mean, if I'm looking at the top of the draft, like, is it Derrick Henry? I mean, I don't own any shares of Derrick Henry, but I mean, Derrick Henry, he's been okay. I don't think he's been a first-round pick, and I feel like owners that pick Derrick Henry in the first round of their fantasy football draft, maybe they have 2 wins, but they're probably not that great. I mean, I don't know. Trevor Lawrence, everyone's expecting him to, kind of take off and be that top-tier quarterback. He's been okay. I don't think he's made that jump yet either, but I don't know. What do you guys think? I tried to look at the top of the board at this one. I mean, I could talk about Jahmyr Gibbs and Kyle Pitts all day long. We did have some signs of life from Kyle Pitts. 7 catches for 87 yards last week. Maybe he can keep that going, be a breakout for the second half. But biggest disappointment, Jahmyr Gibbs or Kyle Pitts? No, I think I got to go at the top of the board with either. I'll go Derrick Henry, I guess. It's hard to say because he hasn't been terrible. But, I mean, I don't think he's been the first-round pick that owners spent their capital on there.
It's the usage that's really been his problem. Why was Derrick Henry such a stud in seasons past? Well, he was getting, 35, almost 40 touches a game, right? And this year, they brought in Tajay Spears. Was a great college running back out there in Tulane. Now he's in the NFL, and they're giving him work. Now, don't get me wrong. Derrick Henry is getting carries. He's just not getting the targets that he started to get last season. And, he's getting fewer carries now in a lot of games, because of Tajay Spears. They're actually utilizing him. So I think with Henry, it's less about, is he over the hill? Does he, is he battling an injury? I don't think those are the issues. I think that he's actually got some legitimate competition, for touches and carries out there in Tennessee. So that's been his big thing. But since we're talking about running back disappointments, Josh Jacobs, he won the rushing title last season, and he has not been good this year. Now he's starting to heat up a little bit more, right? They're starting to get him working into the receiving game. So like I said, he's starting to heat up. But his first 3 games, I don't think he scored double-digit points. So, anyone that, the one team that I have Jacobs on, and, luckily the rest of the team is good. But every week I see him putting up, single-digit points until, like I said, more recently, last week he had a decent game. But up until then, he wasn't getting into double digits, and he was looking like a real dead spot in my lineup. And you can't miss on those high draft picks. That's what really cripples you. You mentioned Kyle Pitts. He went late this year, right? So you had most of your team formed before you had to draft Kyle Pitts. Whereas in years past, you'd have to get him in, the 3rd round or whatnot. That could really hamper you. But guys you're taking in, with a top 3 pick, we'll say, if they don't perform and they don't hit and at least be, consistent, decent double-digit fantasy producers, it's hard to win that way. What do you think, Mike?
All right, a little quick shout out to Johan Rojas, who just cleared the bases, catching that deep outfield pass. We got out of that inning. We were it was a little stressful right there. But for me, it's got to be Madison. Everybody touted this guy as an RB1 now that Dalvin Cook was gone. Not only is he not an RB1, they went and made a trade for Cam Akers, who's probably my second biggest disappointment. and basically told everybody, like, yeah, he's not the guy. And for me, if you're going to go into the league RB1, and I didn't have any shares in Madison because I didn't believe in him. But, I mean, the Vikings offense with Justin Jefferson, you get Jordan Addison, you got Kirk Cousins going to be slinging the ball. That should have opened up a lot of opportunities. And for Madison not to seize that opportunity, I mean, that's not only concerning, but the people that spent the draft capital on him, you could have gotten a guy like Mostert because Madison was going 3, 4, 5 rounds ahead of him. So for me, it's got to be Madison is the biggest disappointment. A guy that came into the year supposed to be the RB1, and I mean, at this point, doesn't even look like he's startable.
Do you think that could change, Mike, with the injury to Justin Jefferson? If you're living under a rock or you don't have Justin Jefferson on your fantasy team, he tweaked his hammy against the Chiefs on Sunday. He's going to be on the 4-game injured reserve designation. So no Justin Jefferson for the next 4 games.
I think 4 games is going to be very interesting because how these next 4 games go, I think will determine what the Vikings do. Do they ship out Kirk Cousins, try and get some draft capital, tell, hey, Jefferson, who refused to sign the contract extension because of the quarterback situation, hey, we're going to go get either Drake May or Caleb Williams, who are 1A and 1B in this coming draft, because if they don't have a quarterback, he's not going to stay. So I think that offense is going to struggle mightily now that Jefferson's not there. He's going to be getting stacked boxes constantly. I just don't see how Akers or Madison are going to do anything remotely resembling putting up starting running back numbers.
Oh, yeah, it definitely hurts their offense. No one benefits from losing a guy like Justin Jefferson because it's eyes, right? You know what I mean? Eyes and focus of the defense are all on Jefferson, which opens up the field for other playmakers. So like you were saying, stack boxes they're going to see. Their offensive line is not good, so it's not like they can just get behind them and run the ball. Their defense is terrible, so they can't just play good defense and run the ball. I think it's a lost season for the Vikings. Everyone who was predicting that coming into the season, they're spot on, and I think they're going to continue to be spot on, especially with Jefferson out. We all hear rumblings that Kirk Cousins might get moved. They might end up shutting Justin Jefferson down for the whole season. If they continue to lose like this, right? They only have 1 win. So none of those things bode well for who is now a plodding running back in Alexander Madison. And the crazy part, what's most disappointing about it is Madison has been there, right? Behind Dalvin Cook for years. The Madison truthers, especially in fantasy, have always sworn by him that all he needs is the opportunity and all he needs is the touches and the carries to be an absolute fantasy stud. I don't know what has happened. I don't know if he got old or what, but Madison, has not. He's gotten the opportunity this year, and he has not been a stud. I will say the only bright spot is that if you do look at his game log, when he's gotten 17 carries or more, he's broken 90 yards. So his bad games have been the games where he's just not getting touches. Now, I don't know if that's game script or if like I said, because they have such a bad offensive line, they just realize they can't run the ball and they need to throw the ball or what. But like I said, if you look at his game log, when he is getting the carries, he is producing fantasy value. And that's not surprising because most running backs are like that. You give most running backs in the NFL, the first, second, or third string running back on a team in the NFL, if you give them 20 carries a game, most of them are going to be able to get you, 90-plus yards.
All right, let's move on. Second half breakouts, potential league winners. Jesse, why don't you start this one off?
Whew, that is a tough one. I guess since I'm starting off, I might as well just be corny and say Jonathan Taylor. Now this pick obviously takes a hit if Anthony Richardson can't get back on the field closer to that 4-week mark. Some reports have come out that said 4 to 8 weeks with this AC joint sprain. So we're hoping that it's closer to the 4-week mark for all of my fantasy teams and for anyone else out there that's relying on the Colts offense. But Jonathan Taylor, I don't need to say much more than look at what he's done in the past. And that was obviously without Anthony Richardson, who's a rookie this year. Now look at Zach Moss, right? Look at what Deion Jackson before they let him go, right? Look at what Shane Steichen is doing there down there in Indianapolis. We talked about how terrible Minnesota's offensive line is. Indianapolis has a very good offensive line, right? They've invested in the offensive line over the years in the past, right? So I think Jonathan Taylor, for anyone that stashed him and was able to wait it out, Jonathan Taylor could easily be a league winner for you in a year, especially where there's not a lot of running backs that are putting up, top-notch fantasy, league-winning performances, right? Especially, guys that were on waiver wires or, falling later in drafts. I'm not talking about the McCaffreys of the world, I'm talking about the guys that you could get a little bit later. And Jonathan Taylor was one of those because everyone knew he was going to hold out. So he fell in drafts. I think moving forward, once he gets his feet wet and they start giving him the rock, Jonathan Taylor can be a league winner for you.
For me, I got to go Jordan Addison. He's in the perfect opportunity now with Justin Jefferson going to be on the shelf for at least the next 4 weeks. Let's see what he's got. I know the first couple of weeks he benefited a lot from getting 3 touchdowns in those first 4 weeks. But now that Justin Jefferson isn't the guy there, I'd have to expect Jordan Addison to get a bunch of targets at least. So let's see what he has with that. I definitely think Kurt maybe putting on audition for other teams because they have until week 8 for the trade deadline. So Jordan Addison is somebody that I definitely think could break out even more than what he's done so far. I'm talking about putting up potential receiver number 2, borderline receiver number 1 numbers.
For me, I guess I'm just gonna head to the galleys with Kyle Pitts. If Kyle Pitts doesn't turn it around, if Kyle Pitts doesn't show me more of that 7-catch, 87-yard performance that he gave me last week, my teams are kind of donezo. He's the tight end I latched onto in this player pool. It's like someone's got to step up at tight end. I mean, Andrews and Kittle are okay, and obviously Travis Kelce is a stud, but, I mean, that's only 3 guys. Dallas Goedert, Sam Laporta, he's a top 5, top 7, top 8, however you want to rank him. He should absolutely 100% be starting on your fantasy team if you have him. Kyle Pitts, I mean, Drake London, he's got a lot of talent. Desmond Ridder has to lock in on one of these guys. So I don't know if it's going to be Drake London, who's got a lot of talent, or Kyle Pitts that emerges in Atlanta over these next couple of weeks to be the go-to guy in Atlanta, because Bijan's all world. He's a really good running back. He's going to get more and more shares down there in Atlanta. He's just too talented to be in timeshares with guys like Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson. All due respect to those guys. So I guess I'm going to split this between my Falcons pass catchers, Drake London, who I own no shares of, and Kyle Pitts, who I own a lot of shares of. One of those guys got to step up and be the bell cow pass catcher for a young quarterback in Desmond Ridder. Atlanta has everything you need to win except the quarterback. So I don't know. Maybe one of those guys can step up, be the go-to guy, and give Desmond Ridder a clear-cut number 1 guy to throw to. So I'm gonna split my answer between Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Before we get into bye weeks, waiver wires, and our survivor pick, let's give our boys at Royal Billiards a quick shout-out.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom-reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
There they are, Royal Billiards, the premier game room store of the Delaware Valley, stocked with the very best in pool tables and accessories, shuffleboards, card tables, dart supplies, bars, and bar stools. Turn any extraordinary room into an extraordinary gaming experience. Oh, did they mention they have hot tubs too? Stop by Royal Billiards, 515 Bethlehem Pike in Colmar, PA, or visit them on the web at royalbilliards.com. fantasypoints.com. There they are right there, right on the screen for you. All right, guys, so week 6, not a lot of bye week trouble. Only the Packers and the Steelers have buys. I think we really need filling guys for these injuries. Jefferson doesn't look like Saquon Barkley's going to play. Austin Eckler's not till Monday night. Doesn't look like he's going to play. It just injuries starting to pile up. As far as waivers go and replacements, I mean, my number one guy is Emari Demercado from the Arizona Cardinals. He got every single snap in the second half of last week's action. James Conner's going to be out for 4 weeks, just like Justin Jefferson. I mean, this guy, he got all the – I mean, it's rare at this point in the season to get a potential bell cow running back on waivers. I used all my money on him, all the leagues and all the money I had left over before I got – that I didn't use on Jerome Ford after the Nick Chubb injury, all got spent on Emari Demercado for the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona, they fight, too. They can score some points. Like, they're not the dumpster fire that we all thought they were going to be. That's really my number one fill-in guy. I'm starting him in a league because I can't wait on Saquon for Sunday Night Football. Jesse talked about him a few weeks ago. He's got to be healthy or he's useless, and he's still not healthy. So Emari Demercado, if you need a running back, if you need a flex, if you're struggling, if you're scrambling, he should be owned in all leagues. I was confident enough in him to use the remainder of my fab on him in all my leagues that I had fab available. So, I mean, he's my fill-in guy this week, number one.
I'd say the waivers are getting thin. For me, the guy that I look at is Devin A. Chain's replacement, who's coming off IR himself, is Jeff Wilson. The Dolphins are using 2 running backs. If you have a Saquon situation where you don't want to play Breida, you know what? Maybe roll the dice on Jeff Wilson. See what he's got. The Dolphins have shown that they can have 2 running backs in that system. As you said, the waivers are getting slim. There's not many options available. And Jeff Wilson coming off of the IR, he's probably not high up on a lot of people's waiver claims list. You can probably get him for cheap. I know I got him for $7. And there was only one other bidder, and he bid $1. So I definitely think there's not a lot of people looking at him, but Jeff Wilson.
Matt Breida stinks. Matt Breida stinks. I'm done playing. I'm done playing that game with Saquon Barkley. You put his backup in like that. That train's done. I'm 1-4 in that league because I've been doing that. Partly because the Giants have been on these primetime games, and it's a total headache. But I'm done. I got my Emari Demercado. I'm done. If Saquon's not in there, fully healthy, he's not playing. Matt Breida's not playing. Chubba Hubbards of the world, get them out of here. Give me my man Emari Demercado. Go ahead, Jesse. Sorry.
Oh, no. You're perfectly fine. And I was just going to say that number one, you have, like Mike was alluding to, you have people that are just, getting sloppy or sleeping on waivers. And then you also have people, who just, they built their roster, right? And, they don't really want to cut anybody. They're hoping that the Marvin Mims of the world, start to get targets, right? They've gotten their handcuff for their number 1 and number 2 running back, right? And they don't want to cut, the Damian Harris off of their bench, just in case, the James Cook goes down or something like that, right? So you can definitely start finding some steals. So it's something you should, everyone out there, especially anyone that's newer to fantasy, you should be thinking about, right? Utilize your free agent budget early, right? Utilize your waiver picks early. And the reason why I'm not saying, blow your whole load on the first person that's available, after the week 1 waivers run. But what I'm saying is, if you get a guy like a Jerome Ford early, you get him for the whole season, right? And then now, in weeks 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you got people that are checked out. You have people that don't have any room on their roster, right, to add people, and you'll just start seeing that the average price for the hot waiver wire ad of that week goes down. So you won't need the $69 to grab the guy that you need week 1, right? If it's week 8, you might only need to spend $9 on them. So keep that in mind moving forward. Also, we've been telling you for weeks now, if you've been listening, you should be filling your bench with high upside number 2 backup running backs, but it got to be high upside. Rob was talking about how he was disappointed in the production of Matt Breida. Now, Matt Breida was okay when he stepped in. He was getting, roughly double-digit points for you, I believe, but he's not Saquon Barkley, right? And it's a lot to ask of Matt Breida, of anyone, to be a Saquon Barkley, right? But you need to ask yourself that question when you're dropping top waiver wire dollars or you're stashing these guys, right? If the number 1 goes down and this number 2 steps in, are they good enough to perform, like a running back 1, right? Like a wide receiver 1, because not everyone is. A Tajay Spears certainly is, right? A Matt Breida, he's going to split the backfield, and he's not that kind of running back, right? Look out in Cincinnati, right? Joe Mixon's not that great, in my opinion. He's not amazing, right? But, he's a number 1 running back in fantasy. If he goes down, I don't think there's anyone there that's going to step in and be like a must-start every week fantasy player. So those are the things that you got to think about, right, moving forward. Getting back to, waivers, who do we add this week? Rob touched on the hot running back commodity of the week. So I just wanted to kind of touch on the hot wide receiver commodity of the week. If KJ Osborne was available in any of your leagues, I think he's an ad. Justin Jefferson went down. He's out for the next 4 weeks, if not longer. They're not going to rush him back. They're not going to play any games, right? And we all know that soft tissue injuries certainly can linger, and the risk of re-aggravation is very high. And just from me being playing sports in my life, and most of you will probably agree, if you pull a hamstring, right, and then you try and get back too quick and you pull it again, that second time is always worse than the first time. It always takes longer to come back. So they're not going to rush him back. They're not going to play with him, right? So I think Osborne, you grab him. You can put him right in your starting lineup. Minnesota's bad already, even with Justin Jefferson on their team, right, out there on the field. So they're going to be even worse without him. And one thing you can guarantee that a bad football team is going to do, they're going to have to throw the ball. Like their job is to win the game. They have to throw the ball. When you get down, you're not going to run the ball because, like I said, your only objective is to win the game. And we've talked a lot about it. Players try to win, right? Most of the coaches out there, on the field, on the sidelines, they try to win. They don't tank. They don't pack it in. So I do expect Minnesota to be throwing even more than they've thrown in the past. They're going to have to spread the ball around a little bit. I do expect Hawkinson to be the best receiver there. I do love Addison, from the University of Pittsburgh, but KJ Osborne knows the offense. Kirk Cousins, he knows Kirk Cousins. They have a rapport that they've shown in the past. And so I believe if he's out there on waivers, Osborne is a great add, and he will be a weekly flex moving forward, especially in PPR leagues.
One quarterback injury we have to talk about, Deshaun Watson. He's not going to play against the Niners on Sunday. I'm still seeing guys like Matthew Stafford out there in free agents. He's playing the Cardinals this week. So if you need a replacement for Deshaun Watson, which is very possible if you're in a 12 or 14, maybe even 16-man league, I'm seeing Stafford out there in a bunch of leagues. He's got Jesse's breakout guy, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp's back, Tutu Atwell can play. Kyren Williams he sent Cam Akers right out of town. He's a good back. And their offensive line has been acceptable. They're not a bad team. So, I mean, if you need a quarterback, I would look no further than Matthew Stafford.
Just touch on Matthew Stafford. Their offense line is actually good because they've drafted well. Not having first-round picks, they've found guys late like Antonio Mafi out of UCLA. Great ad. But, I mean, I don't think Watson would have been a start even if he was healthy. The 49ers
probably not against the Niners, yeah.
Yeah, they're erasing quarterbacks. I don't even want to talk about the absolute massacre that I witnessed on Sunday night. But one thing I did notice. I'm good.
We got 20 minutes left.
Hey, I got called out by a bunch of Eagles fans because I did drop Dak this week for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, because
I was able to give Brock Purdy the number 8 fantasy quarterback. But if he's available, definitely you should look at him, especially in your deeper leagues like 10, 12. If Brock Purdy's available, he is the number 8 fantasy quarterback right now. He's putting up numbers behind that offense. Kyle Shanahan has him cooking, and I mean he puts the ball in good places. He doesn't turn it over. I can't knock Brock Purdy for a guy that hasn't lost the regular season game. There needs to be a talk soon about, is he a top 10 quarterback? Is he a top 7? I feel like he's got to be approaching that. You haven't lost a regular season game, and the only playoff game you lost was because you got hit on the first play and had a UCL injury. Maybe that Eagles 49ers game might be a little different if he had played.
Oh, I mean, that's a big reason why, the Eagles needed to win last year. The stars really aligned for them to win that Super Bowl last year because, like you said, that game was a cakewalk for the Birds, and the Eagles were a great team. Don't get me wrong. It would have been a hard game, period. But, the 49ers didn't have a quarterback. They were back there running the Wildcat, right? I'll take a cheap win. Don't get me wrong.
No. Don't. I'm not knocking you guys for the cheap win.
Exactly. But it was a cheap win. But I'm glad you mentioned Brock Purdy. I'm glad, Rob, you mentioned Stafford. Stafford's a guy that could have been mentioned as one of the surprise of the year, right? No one was expecting anything from that Rams offense. No one was expecting anything from Matt Stafford, and he's been performing. And also, I just got to throw Baker Mayfield's name out there as well. Another guy who has been performing when no one expected him to be good. He has a great receiving core, but even with that, people were discounting him, and we're discounting his receivers, right? Mike Evans and Godwin were going, 5th, 6th, 7th round, right, in some drafts. I just wanted to mention Baker Mayfield's name, before he starts to be terrible. We can't talk about him again.
All right, final segment. Let's do our Survivor pick. Going to be a tough week for us. Our Survivor pick is brought to you by Hats.com. In 2018, Eagles legend Brian Dawkins was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. To commemorate this moment, B-Dawk designed and launched an exclusive collaboration with Bowman Hat Company, America's oldest hat maker, on Hats.com. Brian's love of hats and the Eagles were on proud display in Canton, and now you can find yourself in that famous Hall of Fame fedora. Just go to Hats.com, search Brian Dawkins. There's the Philly promo code for 15% off. Let's dive into it. Look, I mean, we're getting a little tough now because I think obviously the Niners, without Deshaun Watson, if you have them available, which we do not, is a great pick. I think the Baltimore Ravens absolutely roll the Tennessee Titans in London. We used Baltimore week 1. So I'm between Detroit and Philadelphia. Now we're getting to the point now where we're probably going to have to pick a road team.
I'm going to jump in real quick. I only got about 3% battery left. Sorry, I'm at the bar, boys. And boys and girls. I think it's got to be the Birds this week. I think they roll Zach Wilson and the Jets. They can't hang with them. Eagles got a top-tier offense. They got a defense that's going to shut them down. Jalen Carter, book that guy for Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's absolutely crushing it. Let's not get cute. Let's get this win this week and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. When we were talking off air about it, the Eagles look like our best play, our best play available. We've already used the Buffalo Bills, who look like the absolute best play on the board. I don't really want to touch a London game, even if we could use the Ravens. Those games are just fishy. And one thing that everyone has heard before is athletes are creatures of habit, right? And when you throw off that habit and you throw off their routine, that's when weird things can happen. And, we're trying, to eliminate as much variance as possible before these games, actually kick off, right? So, I don't love using a road team, but you're going to have to make tough decisions in Survivor or Eliminator, whatever you call it. And we used Miami last week. It's why a lot of people used Detroit last week, to keep Miami alive this week. because they host Carolina. So if Miami's available out there for you in your survivor pool, they're a great pick, either them or Buffalo. But I'm with the Eagles. Like you said, let's not get cute. I don't really like to play road teams. I don't really want to play against the Jets defense that could be number one any given week, right? And the Jets in general are on the upswing. When you look back on sports seasons, these seasons aren't perfectly linear, right? They oscillate. There's ups and downs, ebbs and flows, throughout the year, depending on all kinds of things, So I do think that obviously the Jets had their real down period, and I think they're on a little bit of an upswing. You want to kind of try and avoid teams like that. But the Eagles are one of the best teams in the league, right? And we still have them available, so they should be able to win this game. So that would be my selection.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit, at Tampa. Tampa's a way better team than the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed?
Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, it's got to be Philly.
I don't know about way better, but they're better.
Yeah.
Better quarterback, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson. So we're in agreement.
Is he that much better?
Yeah. Jesse, lock it in.
No. Yep, lock it in. Jesse controls it. Philadelphia Eagles. All right, everybody, that'll do it. Good luck this week in fantasy. For Jesse King, Mike Everly, I'm Rob Brinkman. Until next week, peace out, everybody.
Let's go, Phils.